Welcome to Writing a Hypothesis. This is Dr. Amanda Rockinson-Zapke, and in this tutorial we are going to discuss how to write a hypothesis, and more specifically how to write a well-stated research and null hypothesis, so that by the end of this tutorial you'll be able to write one. So let's go ahead and get started. To get started, let's talk about the 5 primary characteristics of a well-stated researchable hypothesis. The first characteristic of this hypothesis is that it states the expected relationship between the variables. So what type of relationship you expect as well as the variables are clearly stated. It's something that is testable. It is stated as simply and as concisely as possible, and we'll learn that that's sometimes a little bit difficult, but it needs to be, you need to keep on working with it and editing it until it's simple and concise. It's derived from the problem statement and supported by the literature. So just like a research question, it comes straight from that problem statement, straight from that purpose statement, straight from the literature. Number 5 is that it aligns with the primary research question. So there's alignment, the alignment between the research question and the hypothesis. They're almost stated exactly the same. Now I said we're going to talk about 5 characteristics, and I said 5 because Bartos lists 5, but I added another one, and that's number 6. And the last thing that I think a well-stated researchable hypothesis needs is to use precise terminology. So let's talk a little bit more about this. As we learned with a research question, it's important to use precise terminology, as just by reading a question, and now as we're talking about a hypothesis, just by reading the hypothesis, the reader should be informed about the research design that you're planning to use, as well as the analysis choice. So for example, if a null hypothesis states that there is no significant difference or no statistically significant difference between group means, then it is likely that the researcher, you, are planning to do a group comparison study. So by the use of the word difference, you're implying a group comparison study. If the null hypothesis states that there is no significant association or no statistically significant association between variables, then you as the researcher are implying that you're planning to do probably a correlational study. And as we're talking about precise terminology, I also want to take a little bit of time and talk about this idea of no difference or no significant difference or no statistically significant difference. Can you use them all interchangeably? Well, they're all very similar, and researchers do use them interchangeably. However, I want to point out this. When you're testing a null hypothesis, you're examining whether or not there's not just a difference, but rather if there's a statistically significant one. You're observing whether the difference was simply due to chance or if it was due to the intervention. So simply having a difference or an increase or a decrease is not enough. So for example, let's say I have 2 groups who are, let's say they're second graders, and they're doing one group is doing a math intervention, the other group is just using traditional instruction, and I'm looking to see is there a difference in their math academic achievement scores. And maybe there is a difference between them. Maybe that the group that got the treatment, they had an average score of, let's say, 85%, and the group that did the traditional math had an average of 82%. There's a difference between their group mean averages. However, what I'm doing when I'm testing the null hypothesis is to see if that difference is truly statistically significant, or at a statistically significant level. So I really do champion using precise terminology when you talk about difference. So in a null hypothesis, I recommend using the term no statistically significant difference or no significant difference. And for the writing of an alternative or research hypothesis, using the terminology statistically significant difference, or association obviously, or significant difference or significant association. So now you understand Bartos' 5 primary characteristics of writing a well-stated researchable hypothesis, as well as the importance of using precise terminology. So you should now be able to go out and write a well-stated researchable hypothesis for your research proposal or study.